Hi, it's Charlie Minato from halfwheel.com, and I am back with another humidor review, and this time it is of a humidor that falls into what I imagine is the most popular category of humidors. That would be desktop humidors that cost between $100 and $200. Now, despite being the most popular category of humidors, or at least one of the most popular categories of humidors, there doesn't seem to be a lot of innovation in this space. The humidors tend to look the same on the inside and outside, and they tend to function the same and sort of serve the same purpose. And that's why when I first saw a humidor from a company called Case Elegance, I was quite intrigued. That's because Case Elegance, which also goes by the name Klaro, Klaro, the names are used interchangeably. I'm not really sure why. But the humidors, they look different. They look different on the outside, they look different on the inside, and even the company itself seems to function a bit different than most of the companies selling humidors. And so I purchased a humidor, this particular humidor, called the Kobi, Kobi, and I have been using it for the last almost 2 years now, and I have found that some of the unique features are good, and some of the unique features I am less impressed with. Now, before I get to those pros and cons, I figure I might as well give you the basics of the humidor. It costs $129.99 directly from Case Elegance, though the humidor could also be purchased from third-party retailers as well. In terms of the design, it is very modern looking, which is something that I really like about Case Elegance. A lot of their humidors have very modern looking designs, and many of them are even sort of much more radical looking than this. In terms of the design, it has these horizontal slats that run on the outside. The company says that it was inspired by Japanese pagodas, which explains this particular design. They can be found all across the outward-facing panels of the humidor, so on the front, the back, and the two sides. And there are 12 of these slats, in case you are wondering, from the very bottom to the very top of the humidor. And speaking of bottom and tops of the humidor, in terms of the specs, the physical dimensions, it is just under 14.5 inches wide on the outside, so from here to here. It is 10 and 7/8 inches deep, so from here to here, and it is 7 1/4 inches tall, so from here to here. Now, while I was rotating the humidor around, you might have picked up that it is a glass top humidor. That is something that applies to a lot of Case Elegance's humidors, but not all of them. But most, I think, of the desktop humidors have a glass top feature to them, and this one certainly does. When I open up the humidor, it reveals pretty standard feature that would be this includable removable divider. There is no tray, in case you are wondering, and you may have noticed that there's something unique going on at the bottom of the humidor, and that would be the included humidification system. So this is a piece of Spanish cedar. It is, I would say, mostly decorative, but it does serve some function. It helps to keep the cigars from falling into this little cavity at the bottom, and it sits on top of the area that stores this. This is the included humidifier. It comes with the humidor. Now, this is a two-piece design, so it's just plastic. The top part removes. There's no like locking mechanism or anything in there. And then it reveals this, and you can see there's four little sections here. The humidor comes with a packet of what kind of looks like to be large salt crystals. I imagine they are super absorbent polymers, which is a thing that exists and can be used for humidification. It is not a this is not the first time I've seen this. We actually have like bags of super absorbent polymers over there. But it is a rare sight at this price point. Typically at $130, you're going to get the bottom of the barrel, whatever is the cheapest, most economical option. And that tends to be florist foam, which is amongst the worst ways to humidify your cigars. This is a much, much better option. So you get the super absorbent polymers, or what appears to be super absorbent polymers, and also 2 bottles of humidity solution. So this is the standard fare stuff. It's 65 to 72%, 130 milliliters per bottle, in case you're wondering. This is considered to be the dry climate or winter solution, so I imagine it's going to be a bit more aggressive in terms of the amount of humidity it puts off. I imagine these are propylene glycol based solutions. Maybe there's something else inside of them. Again, this is not, the first time I ran into a system like this, but at this price point, very impressive because you normally wouldn't get it. So you just put the lid back on here. There is this cavity at the bottom of the humidor for the humidifier to go inside of. It is not like super tight fitting, so it's very easy to both put in the humidifier as well as take it out. And then you just put the cover back on top there, the included humidifier. The last piece, the humidor does come with a digital hygrometer. Now, a lot of Case Elegance desktop humidors come with hygrometers that are on the outside, the front panel. I don't particularly like that style of humidifier or hygrometer, sorry, because it introduces one more point of failure. It's a hole that's been cut into your humidor that eventually could, open up and the seal could break there. Now, this comes with its own stand, so it can be placed inside of it, and it's nice because it puts it at a little angle, so it's easier to read through the glass top panel. If you didn't want to use this because you wanted to save space, you can easily take out the digital hygrometer and just use that by itself. But the stand is a nice feature. Oh, one final thing. So another sort of Case Elegance signature would be at the bottom of the humidor, and that is an accessory drawer. So this is a felt line drawer. It can fit certainly lighters and cutters. Maybe some like desktop lighters won't fit in here. Even a thinner. This is a warped cigar case from way back when. But some of the thinner cigar cases could probably even fit down here. I suppose if you wanted to store cigars in this, you could maybe use a Boveda pack. I don't think it's made for that. I don't know if I necessarily recommend it, but I think it would work with the Boveda pack right if you needed to store more cigars. And so that's the Case Elegance Kobi, and that's what you get for $130. Two, two, two. So on to the pros and cons. I'm going to start off with the good stuff. And number one, as it oftentimes is in these reviews, I really like the way this humidor looks. I like the way that a lot of Case Elegance humidors looks. If you've watched some of these other humidor reviews or seen them on halfwheel.com, you know that I like modern looking designs. This definitely checks that box. And it just looks like it probably costs more than $130. It's a little bit nicer in all of the sort of small ways. Even things like, see these like hinges on the back, right? It's a couple cents more, I'm sure, to get the painted hinges versus the standard bare metal ones. And when you're making a humidor for $130, you got to save money everywhere that you can. But with this humidor, that's not necessarily the case. Like there are some of these features that this humidor has that I don't oftentimes see on the humidors that are at this price point. If I had to guess without knowing, I would have probably guessed this is like a $250 humidor, which is nearly double the actual price of it. So kudos to Case Elegance there. And again, this is sort of on the conservative side of some of these designs. There are some really interesting looking humidors that the company has made over the years. Number two is the included humidification system. It is, look, this is the easy way to put it. At this price point, you're normally going to get a floor foam humidifier. I would recommend you throw that away immediately. Don't even bother using it. This is something that will work. The super absorbent polymers, assuming that that's what that is, along with the humidity solution, which will probably some sort of propylene glycol based thing, that will work. I've used it before. It's not perfect. It's not as accurate or as simple as something like Boveda or the other two-way humidification systems. It's not going to be as simple or as accurate as electronic humidification would be, although for this size interior, that would probably be complete overkill. But this will work, and I wouldn't recommend throwing it away immediately upon getting one of these humidors. So that is a major improvement, and especially at this price point, where it's so oftentimes it is just the cheapest of the cheap that you see inside. So kudos to Case Elegance there. Number three is related to that, and that is that Case Elegance would like to sell you a subscription. And it is a very intriguing part of the company to me. It's not just subscriptions for humidor stuff. They also sell cigars and would like to sell you some cigars as well. But what I think Case Elegance's sort of long-term play here is to sell the humidors with a little bit less margin than normal, but then to try to get you hooked into this ecosystem where it can sell you the replacement or the refill fluids, as well as some more of the polymers inside. So for $40, the company will sign you up for an annual membership. So once a year, it will ship you 2 bottles of the regular solution, 2 bottles of the winter solution, as well as a little packet of the super absorbent polymers or whatever those beads are. I suspect that if you wanted to do this cheaper, it would be cheaper to buy super absorbent polymers and some sort of propylene glycol solution by itself, not through Case Elegance. I don't know how different this stuff is versus what a company like Zycar, for example, sells with its humidity solution. I imagine it's pretty close, and I do think you could probably get the Zycar stuff to work. But for some people, the subscription model is going to be great because you just know once a year you get what you need to make sure your humidor stays fresh. It's not for me, but I definitely think it's an upside here, and I'm very curious to see how the company sort of uses it and how successful it is. And also, I suspect it's part of the reason why this humidor isn't $150 or $175. So before I get started with the cons, there is an extensive 25-week, if my math is correct, humidor testing procedure that I go through here at Halfwheel. If you would like to read more about that or learn more about that, you should check out the written article on halfwheel.com. It will have the graphs as well as some of the other data. It's not just like relative humidity and temperature data over the 25 weeks. It involves weighing things, moisture meters, all sorts of different measurements are taken during this process. And I bring that up because the first con here is that the data suggested that there was a leak. Some of the testing procedure went really well for this humidor, but some of it didn't go well, and some of it was just kind of weird. And if I had to look at the data by itself, I would have guessed that there was some sort of leak, just based on sort of the test that it did well on and the test that it didn't do well on. That tends to be an answer of a leak. And I already knew there was a leak because midway through that testing procedure, I guess about 15 weeks in, I realized that the back left corner, if I'm facing the humidor, had visible separation. You can see the video on the screen right now of what that looked like when I first spotted it. Again, about 15 weeks into the testing process. And if you're wondering what it looks like now, there's an actual money shot here because I can stick some currency inside the corner of the humidor, and I don't think this humidor is supposed to function as a bill holder, but it does, and I could probably fit a credit card inside it. That would make it worse, I imagine, but it's getting wider. And when I noticed the issue in the back left corner, I inspected the other three corners to make sure there weren't any issues then, and at that time there were not, but since then, the other back corner has also developed the same issue, and it's actually, I think, worse on this side than it is on the left side. And so like I can almost fit the whole bill down the humidor here. It's not great, and I do think it affected performance. Now, as far as the front corners go, they are fine right now. This corner right here is the best of the four corners. This one right here, it doesn't appear to have any issues yet. This corner definitely has some signs that it's starting or has started on the inside of the humidor. The outside looks fine. There's no visible like light leak like the back corners are. But it wouldn't surprise me if in the next coming months that the humidor is separated on all four corners. It makes sense that if two of them have started, the other two are probably bound to happen. Now, the other humidor that I purchased, which I've actually had longer than this particular one, the other Kobi has been fine. It still doesn't have any. I checked yesterday. It doesn't have any issues with the humidor coming apart. I don't really know why this one is having issues and that one's not. Now, number two is related to that included humidification system, which I was just saying nice things about. It's not about the humidification system itself, rather how it is placed in the humidor. Case Elegance is one of two companies I've seen of late that have decided to put their humidifiers below the floor of the cigars at the very bottom of the humidor. And while it looks good, and there actually is like maybe some science here, humidity tends to rise. So if you put the humidifier below the cigars, it will rise sort of like above the cigars. Whereas most humidors tend to have the humidifier on the lid, which means it's already above the cigars and, you know, rising, whatever. I don't really think it matters. This is such a small internal environment that it probably isn't a factor. But it is really annoying because if you have to go refill the humidifier, right, or if you have to just check to see if you need to refill it, you got to take out most of the cigars, if not all the cigars. And if some of the cigars aren't in cellophane, that means you're running the risk of damaging the cigars. It's just a very, very annoying thing to have to live with. I hope Case Elegance can find some other solution for this because if given the option, I would choose not to use it like this just because of the annoyance. It really is not the best thing in the world. And number three is also related to the included humidifier. Well, it's just a part of it and related to the location of it. And that is that this humidor doesn't hold as many cigars as it looks like it would. And that is because of some of these interesting design choices. So I mentioned earlier there are these 12 horizontal slats that run throughout the humidor, right? And so they're a good way of gauging kind of how much space can be used here. So I'm going to grab some electrical tape here. Well, if you open up the humidor, you immediately lose two of the slats. So you could, in theory, pile the cigars on top here. There is a bit of space, of extra space with the lid. But without the tray, I think that would be somewhat difficult to do. And I don't think many people are going to end up piling that many cigars on top here. So maybe you get an extra like 4 or 5 cigars. But you certainly aren't going to be able to fill the humidor up to the very top like you could if it had a tray. So let me mark this with the tape. So that's the top usable part right here. And then remember, it's got the accessory drawer at the bottom. That has two of the slats. There's also another one at the very bottom right here. And unfortunately, because of the included humidifier and that false floor to store the included humidifier, it's not like this is the bottom of the interior space. In fact, it's actually um, not even one more up. It's a little bit above one more up, but just for the purposes of making this a little bit easier. All right, this is, to be clear, it includes the yellow tape. So from here to here, that's the usable space inside of this humidor. My guess is you can get about 50 cigars inside of this thing. Maybe a bit more if you're being creative. Now, if you're wondering, like, well, what does that look like in practical terms beyond 50 cigars? This is a diamond crown humidor that is externally substantially smaller in every which way. So let me line them up here. So you can see right here, right? Like there is a substantial amount of width difference going on here. In terms of the depth, it's closer, but there's, I don't know, an inch or so of room here where the Kobi extends further than this diamond crown. And then in terms of the height of the humidors, the Kobi is definitely taller. There's not really much comparison there. You know, it's a couple inches taller. Here's the thing. This humidor is a little bit larger on the inside in terms of usable volume than this humidor is. It's almost the same, right? But it's technically a little bit larger on this side. I really struggle with this because it takes up a lot of space and just does not store a lot of cigars. Now, if you really want the accessory tray, you're going to have to give up that space one way or another. But some of the other choices, whether it's the included humidifier or even the like hygrometer, right? Like this is going to take up quite a bit of usable storage space inside of the humidor. There's a lot of choices that have been made here that really sacrifice the amount of cigars that you can store inside. And that seems like as good of a place as any to end this review. And that is because I keep getting caught up in the space issue. At the end of the reviews, we are forced to sort of make a recommendation. Would we recommend that you purchase this, or would we not recommend that you purchase the product that we are reviewing? And in this case, I would not recommend that you purchase this product for yourself. I think for too many of you, the problem is going to be you're going to buy this humidor, you're going to take your old humidor and start taking the cigars out of the old humidor that's probably smaller than this humidor, and eventually run out of space inside of this humidor and realize that the physically larger humidor does not store as many cigars as the physically smaller humidor. And for me, that just seems like a problem that so many people are going to run into, and it's going to mean that 6 months down the road, you're finding yourself wanting to replace this humidor with something that holds more cigars. Now, if you want the accessory drawer, which some of you do, you're going to have to give up the space anyways, and so maybe this is a good entry-level humidor at $130. I think it's fine, so long as you don't have the leakage issues in the back. I'd recommend it as a gift. I think that you would give it to somebody for 130 bucks. It looks very impressive. It feels very impressive. Again, leakage issues notwithstanding, it functions pretty well. And so I think it makes sense there. It's very inefficient, and it's not something I would recommend as buying as sort of your main desktop humidor because of that. Now, if you would like to read reviews of humidors that I would recommend you buying, you can check out halfwheel.com where there are reviews of lots of humidors, as well as other cigar accessories like lighters, cutters, ashtrays, and then some, as well as reviews of cigars and daily coverage of what is happening in and around the cigar industry.